Hey, this is Veronica Setsky, and you're watching Pax8 Live.
We want to help you take your MSP business to the next level.
We have just expanded the amount of resources that you as partners have through Pax8.
Real security is about how you manage the losses, how you take the punches, how well you detect, how well you respond.
This is where we'll be bringing you content that you want to see every week to help you grow your business.
And I think the real winners here are the managed service providers.
Who is this?
Chief Cuteness Officer.
My advice is know what you're selling and know whether it's making you money.
I ended up living in Korea for 4 years.
I was wondering when we were going to talk about the elephant in the room.
But thanks, Dad.
Let's talk about risk assessment. So there's all kinds of ways to respond to risk.
Man, it's great to see you, Dom.
If you're really interested in just the nerdy bits of home security, definitely check out those resources. That was a huge thunder.
We keep finding ways that we're helping partners, finding either, balance in their life or focus or purpose.
Practices that are going to help improve your project management skills or your finances.
We're here to talk about setting long-term goals and then how to achieve them.
Increasing your quality, therefore becoming the best place in town to work.
Welcome to Academy Live. So welcome back to Academy Live. You may notice today that Rex is not here. He is on vacation, so don't worry, he'll be back next week. So today it'll be Chris and I, and we're looking forward to chatting with Nick Newell. He's an executive coach at Pax8 Academy. What does an executive coach do, you might ask? Well, an executive coach, they have up to 20 clients at any given time, and they maintain those relationships, hold their clients accountable, instruct and teach one-on-one with their clients on how businesses may be accomplished using the Pax8 Academy, previously C-level operations, principles, and core values. And they'll talk more about this, but sometimes people think one-on-one, it's just gonna be just me and just one person from my company. No, it's the whole company and the team of coaches one-on-one training. And so we're also gonna be talking about something I'm really excited about, which is the MSP Employee Onboarding course that Nick has developed and has been teaching. So this course will get your new employees ready for their first month on the job by learning the ins and outs of how an MSP operates. And now I will let Chris introduce Nick so they can talk about executive coaching.
Thank you, Bessie. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we do miss Rex, but I think we'll survive for an episode, right, Bessie? And I'm thrilled to bring on Nick. Nick we met probably about a year and a half ago. Just brought on as executive coach here at Pax8, and we kind of worked remotely. We had an opportunity to attend a conference together. We got to spend some real time, and I really enjoyed that. Getting to know you a little bit, your background, we really kind of connected. And I remember you didn't plan on it, but you ended up taking some notes for me in one of the sessions. So, by the way, thank you for that. That was really helpful to reconnect. But I want people to hear about you and your background. So do you mind, introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on. My name's Nick Newell. I'm an executive coach at Pax8 Academy. What that means, like Bessie said, we work with MSP partners to help them improve their operations. And I'm an engineer by trade and at heart. So I've kind of spent my time in the trenches, doing the engineering and building servers and switches, and moved my way into management and now operations. And I'm in a great place to try to give back and help some other folks through their journey and hopefully help them not make the same mistakes I've made.
I mean, come on, how much more relevant can that be in your role? But tell us a little bit about how does your experience help you? How did that kind of get you to where you're at now?
Great question. I've been fortunate to have some great mentors in my life and my career, to kind of help me, see the why behind the technology and see the why, how operations affect a business and how IT really powers a business. I think that's something that a lot of folks miss, especially if you work in technology. So being in this role, getting to see both sides of how the technology, empowers, our partners' clients, and also how our partners can improve their business, become more profitable, become more efficient, and really make a difference, in their community.
Okay. I'm looking forward to getting into that in a lot more detail. But first, let's
Yeah.
take a step and we do a quote every week. And you picked this week's quote, and I'd love for you to share it with us and talk a little bit about what it means to you.
Absolutely. So Steve Jobs, one of my favorite entrepreneurs of all time, of course. You have to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. And that's something that's just resonated with me, as an engineer, as an operator, as a coach. As the engineer in me, you want to see something nice and shiny and start with, oh, how can we use the latest technology and sell it to our clients? How can we give them this Azure or AWS or this Intune, whatever. It's going to be great. This is the new thing. And not starting on the other side of that equation and then MSP is how can we make our clients more efficient and make them better at serving their industries and their clients, right? What's actually best for them? And it's not always the shiny latest and greatest thing. As hard as that is to, recognize as an engineer, it's really giving them what they need and what's best for their business, their industry, and again, making them more efficient. Getting that technology to power their business. We're not using a business to play with cool technology most of the time.
Right? I think that's really powerful to think about that. The technology in and of itself, without the impact, without the, it being used, you could have the coolest new thing out there. And if nobody uses it, it's really not that cool. And I think doing it for the right reason really aligns you and your purpose. When you were a technician and engineer, did you think that way? Did you think about, fixing this problem, or did you think about the why and more behind it?
It took a while, Chris, to kind of have that realization, of what we were doing and what we're really trying to accomplish. I think like many early on in my career, especially working in MSP, there's these tickets and there's this project and I just do this thing and you don't really understand why, those things happen or why you're doing them. So it definitely takes some time to understand that we're making decisions for our partners, on how their business is going to operate, right? For the better or for worse. Especially doing projects in an MSP, that's one of those areas you can't be wrong, right? Or you don't want to be wrong, or if you are, you want to figure it out quickly. But we're really they're trusting us with their livelihoods and their business, their product, to make those good decisions and to be that trusted advisor. So definitely kind of a growth stage, which I'm sure we'll talk about in this conversation some. Little foreshadowing, but yeah.
No, I think that's great, and I appreciate that. And it's a good transition into kind of learning a little bit more about what executive coaching is and what you see. And my first question to kind of segue into that, we talked about why, right? And that for you, that was kind of this journey of first you just doing it, now you're thinking about why. Is that a big part of the conversation and coaching experience? Is talking about the why? Is where does that come into play with the executive coaching?
Absolutely. So, great question. Before we even get started with a new partner, we want to work together to create an engagement statement, and create the why. Why did they come to Pax8 Academy to improve their business? What are their challenges that they're experiencing? What do they want to get better at? What are they trying to achieve? And as I describe it, kind of let this be our guiding star, right? And it can change over time, and that's good. That's normal. But to get started, we have to understand our purpose, why we're here, and what we're trying to accomplish. So we can follow that kind of guiding star through our journey and say, we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish, done, and then next.
Okay. So on that, what does that look like for an engagement? So let's just lean into that a little bit. So a partner says, I need help. I want to do this. I see the value here. They get connected with you. What does it look like in the beginning? How do you start to initially and find out what the why is and what the purpose is and set some goals? Um, Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Um, Start with a very candid conversation. When I work with partners, I try to set up this safe space, if you will, to be vulnerable and to be who you are, and let us really speak the truth about what's going on, and try to leave motion to the side, right? And really focus on the core problems and how we get better. And usually that works with me kind of poking on some bruises, if you will, right, to see where it really hurts and where it's tender, on all these different areas of opportunity, let's say, for improving an MSP, whether it's technical process or finance, or employee management or operations. Kind of poke around to see what hurts, and kind of get a feel for really what they're looking for. A lot of the times, with the way they come to us at Pax8 Academy and what they say they're looking for, we find out after we poke a little bit, maybe a little bit different, once we kind of find the root cause of why they're here.
Yeah. Well, you said you used a word that I really really like. I think is vulnerable, and I think we find in peer groups a similarity that vulnerability allows is the biggest opportunities for improvement and change. And I imagine with some of these engagements, it is very emotional and personal. There's a lot of these business owners. It's not just a business; it's part of their identity. I imagine you kind of have to navigate some of those things, like you said, you're poking and finding spots, but how do you deal with the emotional aspect that a lot of business owners experience with their MSP?
I would say half coach, half therapist at times, right? That certainly that certainly pops up.
It resonates.
Um, yeah, for sure. And even for me, I can take myself back to being in those trenches and being in those shoes where I'm having similar problems and thinking about my emotional states. I can really identify one on one with what a lot of our partners are going through, and really try to help them zoom out often, right? Because when we're emotional, we're usually acting on impulse or something that's more recent, that we're dealing with. But how do we zoom out or take a balcony view, as I like to say, of a problem or a process, and really look at that objectively and try to remove emotion when possible, to make sure that we're making the best decision, or we're thinking clearly, or in a long-term way where we're making the best decision for our organization or for our partner's organization as well.
Yeah, I can imagine like just recalling, memories. A lot of knee-jerk reactions to situations or things, or overreacting or not reacting with strategy in mind. And that's one of the things I love. Can you very quickly kind of review the five phases? I know it's just so important, but I think that kind of sets a stage a little bit for how you do what you do, and I think how it addresses things like planning and pain points and emotions sometimes.
For sure. I wish that I had this when I was an operator. It would have saved me so much trouble. And I'll talk about why. But the first phase that we work through when coaching is understanding the best practice and what options are out there. So with Pax8 Academy, we have a lot of templates and guides. I like to call it an operations playbook, that we really customize to make it your own. So we start out with understanding the best practice from our ops guide, that we call it. And I like to sprinkle in my experience, what I've seen or what I've heard or what I've seen other MSPs execute successfully. And really, that conversation is about 90% on the coach's side, 10% on the partner side, just giving them all the information of everything that's out there and what options they have, to kind of start pursuing a path to create a process that they own and that it's their way. And that's the important part, is that it's their way. It's not Pax8 Academy's way. It's not Nick's way. It's that, we start customizing these processes and make them our own, and so that we can use them. We're the owners of them. It's not we got them from Pax8 Academy or from Nick. They're ours now. So we have them customize these processes, write out, document things, even like statuses in the PSA. And like, a lot of folks don't identify. Why would we document these statuses? They're already in the PSA. Why would we have them elsewhere? Isn't this a waste of time? It's like, well, no, right? If your PSA didn't exist tomorrow, we'd be really happy we had all this documentation. and it kind of helps build our operational maturity. But that phase 2, we really try to make it their own, right? So once they understand the best practice, they work through making their own, and then we really get into getting buy-in, right? And training the team. And I use those two words deliberately: buy-in from the team and then train them. We want the team to understand the why, like we were talking about, Chris, like why we're making this change, how it's going to help us, how it's going to affect our partners, right? So
I
once
can't
they
imagine.
understand the why.
Yeah, I can't imagine you'd be very successful without those. Each of those phases or steps has such a key component in that buy-in. Like I said, might be the best thing in the world, but without the agreement and alignment and buy-in, it's not going to be adopted, right?
Exactly. So getting the team buy-in and letting them feel like it's their own, right? Even if they're not involved in the coaching calls, we want them to understand the why and have buy-in on that process and understand that it's for a purpose and it's for a reason. And the fourth phase is implementing. So now that we've understood the best practices, we've made conscious decisions of what we want our process to be, we've trained the team and gotten their buy-in on it, and now we're implementing that change. And then finally, phase 5, which Rex always says is by far the hardest. That was one of the first things he told me when I joined and we were talking about this kind of coaching journey. And I've heard him say it often. It takes 10 times longer to do that phase 5 piece, inspect what you expect, than the first 4 phases. So you really, really have to be dialed in, to make sure the process is happening as you want it to happen and it's going the way you expect it. So I think they say it takes 7 times to saying something for it to sink in, right? And that's kind of like management 101 if we think about it. Like management is following up, to make sure things are done. That trust but verify principle.
Now that I think that gives a good, walking through that helps out about what you do, with clients and this, partners through the coaching experience. But tell me about some other things in your job. What are some things outside of coaching that you do as well that are part of the big picture of an executive coach?
Yeah, excellent question. One more thing before we move on to that, Chris, if that's
Yeah,
okay. I'll
yeah,
say me
absolutely.
personally, in those 5 phases, right? Phase 1, learning the best practice. My reaction as an operator, which I know now is horrible, right? Again, I've got the scar tissue from this, is jumping from phase 1 to phase 4. Like, oh, cool idea, let's implement it, right? And then
Oh
we
yeah.
miss the most important part, is getting our team bought into the process and trained and document it. So it's great to find something cool, and then if you just implement it without those phase 2 and 3, we're not going to have a process of how it works. We're not going to have a method to teach it to someone new that joins our organization, and no one's going to understand the why. They're like, why is this guy telling me to do this? Why am I doing that? Why am I going to do it if I don't understand it? And if
Yeah.
you think about it that way, it makes so much sense from that employee perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a natural inclination. I think we probably see a lot in your experience that, okay, well, you've told me what to do, now I'm going to go do it. And you kind of have to pull back. And I think that's a big part of changing the mindset as an owner as you're going through this. So what else helps reinforce it? And what are some of the other things that you do to contribute to your relationships with the partners?
Yeah, great question. So we do these kind of step back meetings, every quarter or every so often as we're working through a particular type of phase, if you will, or different challenge or kind of different roadmap, if you will. So we talked about the engagement statement, setting our course and setting our path. We'll often, once we accomplish something, like to kind of step back and say, now we've completed what we've tried to, we've set out to do. What's next? Where do we head from here? And try to celebrate that win and celebrate that success, and what we've accomplished, and try to measure that progress. So in IT, we all know if you work in the space, it's largely like a negative framed space, right? Especially in an MSP, everyone has problems all the time, and
Oh yeah.
you're usually speaking to someone when it's not their best day, or their server crashed and it's Armageddon for them. There's not a lot of positivity in the day to day. So I've always felt it important to celebrate those wins, celebrate the successes that we have, even internally as a group. We're making this progress and making these changes. It's good to look back and reflect on where we started, and what we've accomplished, and then look forward to the future, on where we're going and what else we hope to accomplish.
I love that you identified that, because you're right. You see people at their worst. The environment can be, chaotic or emotional again in the day-to-day work and what we see and experience. So the fact that you capture that and reinforce the celebrating the positive and the success and the victories, I think is probably tremendous in maintaining motivation and inspiring and just perspective too, right? I imagine your past experience really resonates to the partners. Your experience and what you know brings a ton of value to those relationships and how you coach and help partners. But what are some of the other skills that have been real critical for you to have as a coach?
Wow, there's so many. That's a tough question.
A loaded question. Yeah. No wrong answers,
for
Nick. No
sure.
wrong answers.
I would say empathy. Really, really trying to understand where the partner's coming from and the challenge, that they're having. And it's a little bit different for every person, the way they experience it or the way that affects them. Even as a coach, if we've heard this challenge before, right? You don't want to just kind of brush it off or dismiss, the way someone's feeling, about a problem, and kind of really help them connect to the why, or what's really causing this, and kind of get to the bottom of some of those situations.
Okay.
I would say that was probably the biggest learning for me. I would say others, may have different experience.
So maybe curveball here, so be careful. What's a challenge that you experienced? Maybe what's something unique when you came into this role that was kind of a very new experience for you that maybe you didn't expect or imagine until you kind of got there and really got into the role and the position doing what you do?
Absolutely. This leads to like my biggest challenge with learning how to coach, Chris, and not be a consultant. Like that is it, right? And
Oh.
coaching versus consulting, huge difference. They sound very similar.
Okay, unpack that a little bit. I think that's really good to get into. Tell me a little bit more about that, what that means to you.
Absolutely. So my background as an engineer and just my personality, I'm a builder. I like to build, like to create. I very much like to get my hands on something, whether it's process or, technical engineering, whatever the case may be, and really create. But that's not coaching, right? That's consulting. And that's a big difference, right? And that's a distinction we really try to make, on the academy side, is when folks come to us that they're here for coaching and not consulting. And the way we define that is we want to help our partners be leaders and great operators. We want them to be the coach inside their organization. We don't want them saying, well, Nick's the expert. He said do this, so we did that. Like, that's not what we want. We want our partners to learn the best practices, see what the options are out there, evaluate that against what they're doing now, document it, train it, implement it, and then work through it and really make it their own. It's not Nick said or Pax8 Academy said. It's really them being the expert and learning how to lead and create process and be that expert internally for their organization and not relying on someone external or something like that.
Well put. And it's probably a lot more effort. Like you said, that mindset of yours of coaching versus consulting, a different approach, a different amount of work and input, but probably much more sustainable and effective on the output side. But I appreciate you sharing that. That's a great observation. Now, I want to go into, we have a bit of a feedback, a testimonial, if you will. There's a video clip of one of the partners that you work with. So could we get that to play?
Hi, I'm Louis Sad, CEO and founder of DataStream IT. We're based in Glendale, California, which is in the Los Angeles area. And our company's an MSP, and we service a wide variety of industries, including accounting, law, engineering, nonprofits, entertainment, being here in LA, and everything in between. And we've had our business for about 20 years now, and that entrepreneurial journey has been a journey of ups and downs and bumps along the ways, and successes and failures and so forth. I came across C-Level about 5 or 6 years ago, and we didn't ultimately pull the trigger and move forward with coaching until about a year ago, and that's when we met Nick. Nick's been our coach for the past year, and he's been phenomenal. Nick's a coach, and he reminds us of that. He's a coach. He's not a consultant. The services that he provides are not MSP in a box. In other words, here, open the box and, form your MSP a certain way. He's a coach. He often tells us the leadership of your company often has all the answers. I'm just here to kind of pull them out and give you some tips along the way and show you best practices, and you need to incorporate this as leaders of DataStream in a way that works for you. So I can't speak highly enough about Nick. He's patient, he's firm when he needs to be, he puts us in our place when he needs to, and it's just been a great experience. Some of the takeaways that I can think of working in the coaching arena with Nick are, we need to be moving more towards metrics-driven leadership and management as opposed to muscle and feel. So much of the entrepreneurial journey is muscle and feel. This seems right. Let's take on this client because they seem like they'd be a good fit, or let's hire another staff member because it seems like it's a good time to do so. Nick's really pulling us in to a framework where we need to look at the metrics of how many tickets are coming in per day, how many projects do you have that you're working on, how many project hours do you have going on as a team, and those types of metrics will help us lead daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly and beyond. So it's been really good working with Nick, and this first year has been super impactful, and we're looking forward to future years of working with Nick, and that's going to look completely different a year from now, 2 years from now, and so forth. So I have the utmost respect for Nick and the coaching program through Pax8, and I'm looking forward to the future and what it's going to hold for us.
Wow. If I guarantee if Rex were here right now, he'd be holding up his arm, going like this, going little, goosebumps thing. That I love hearing that stuff. So, Nick, I have to ask, how does it feel to hear something like that?
A little emotional, Chris. To be honest, it's so humbling, to hear that kind of feedback, from a partner. And Louis is great. His team's great. They make it really easy for me. Wow, it's a lot to take in, to say the least.
When I loved hearing how he emphasized. You talked about Nick Shakot. We just kind of went through that in conversation, and it just kind of happened to flow that way. But you really reinforced that and what that means to them, and the impact. Do you see them respond like that at the calls? Like you talking about it, do you see that on the calls with them about the way they respond to that, and you identifying what your role is?
Absolutely. I was going to say you may pick up on that. I've said that once or twice, right? The difference between coaching and consulting.
Just a few times, yeah.
But one or two, right? But they're a great team, and again, like most things, it starts with a relationship, right? We kind of set the tone early when we work together of making that safe space, making a space where we can all be vulnerable and call out good things, right? And also not be afraid to say what we think, and be radically honest with each other about how we're doing or how we're working through a process, or really what's on our mind. And that allows us to progress really quickly, especially as a leadership team. We're not wasting time with this kind of back channel, who's saying this or who's doing what. We say what we feel. If there's a problem, we deal with it head on and move forward. And Louis is kind of coaches his team very similar. They already had that culture built in, so we really clicked nicely working together in this relationship of progressing through their operational journey together.
Well, I liked how you said, sometimes that means putting somebody in their place, and I think it's meant from a very good place. It's not a negative or bad thing, but I think it's powerful when they recognize, yeah, it's not always Nick's a coach. It's just like a cheerleader and rah rah and go and everything. It's okay. You tried. sometimes it's holding people to some accountability and challenging them, which can be difficult or uncomfortable sometimes. But how do you deal with that side of it?
Yeah, I think if we're not taking some L's once in a while, we're not trying hard enough, right? That's
Mm,
generally kind of my thought process around it. If we're not failing, then the bar is not high enough.
that,
That's usually my mentality on how that goes. So we want to see some failure. We want to see folks stretch themselves on what they consider possible or what they think is possible. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Set those more
yeah.
aggressive deadlines. Work an extra hour. Maybe pop something open on Saturday. And make sure we hit these deadlines and these marks and get to where we really want to be, and celebrate those successes along the way.
Good. Well, I want to give you an opportunity. I know in these conversations, so much goes through the mind. And I've asked a lot of questions. Is there anything you want to add? Anything that's going to mind that you'd like to say or share with those that are listening?
Yeah, I would say anyone that's operating an MSP, whether you're a service manager, you're a lead engineer, you're an account manager or owner, I would really consider looking into what Pax8 Academy has to offer if you haven't jumped in to really see what's there. We have a ton of free content that a lot of coaches like myself have written that's out there that's completely free. We have instructor led courses. I teach one, and Bessie and I are going to talk about that a little bit. There's a lot there, even outside of this kind of one-to-one or one-to-a-few, coaching opportunity. Pax8 Academy has a lot to offer, and I promise this is not a plug because I work at Pax8, but please look into it. It'll help so much. Right? I wish that I would have had this available when I was operating and managing teams and managing companies. There's just a wealth of information and knowledge available. That's just there. So I would say take advantage of it.
I've thought that same thing many times over the past 3, 4 years I've been here. And now you made it very easy to segue into our next session because now Bessie is going to be talking with you about the instructor-led course around MSP onboarding. Bessie?
Thanks so much, Chris. It's great to see you, Nick. Well, I'm really
Nice
excited
to
to
see
talk
you.
about. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this course, MSP Employee Onboarding. And this course is a long time coming. I know it started way even before I even started at Pax8. You had this idea. So can you tell us a little bit of the backstory of where did this course idea come from? And then we'll get into what is in the course, why do we have it, etc.
Excellent. Yeah. So this started a couple years ago, again, based on my experience. And the original idea was to make what I called at the time MSP 101 a startup, and really had this concept of developing what you need to know to work at an MSP. So moving a little further back, when I was operating, and I'd done a lot of hiring over my career in many roles, right? Technical, account management, sales, pretty much everything. And the same thing tended to be true no matter what the role was that folks had great experience, they were very smart, but they just didn't know what managed services was and how it was different from traditional IT, or being in-house IT, if you will. There was always this gap. And when I was operating, I was like, man, it would be so nice if there was like a class or something I could send someone to get them MSP ready, to understand all these basics, to really understand what an MSP is, and come, ready to work with all the kind of basics under their belt. And originally, kind of kicked it around as, a startup idea, and, really trying
That's
to
the
think through
entrepreneur
how
in
this may
you.
work. Yes, exactly. And when I came to Pax8 and I learned what Academy was doing and what Rex and the team, were building, in this area, it all came back to me. It's like this is the place for it. This is where this idea needs to be. Kind of resonated with Rex's vision of Academy a lot. So we started building. And like Bessie, originally this was engineer onboarding, right? It was all about the technical folks, which
That's your
aligns to my
background, which makes
background.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I, even when it was back in what I called the MSP 101 days, I still own the domain, by the way. I even built
Well, that's a good one to
videos and
have.
kind of built some. Yeah, I think that's a great one. Anybody wants to buy it that's watching this, you let me know. Um, built these videos and training, and I kind of had some ideas originally of how to train engineers to even do simple technical tasks. And that's kind of what I pitched Rex on for this course. Of really getting engineer ready of what they're going to experience at an MSP. And then once we started building Bessie, I think it became clear, talking to you and others, that there was an opportunity to open this up a little bit more, because a lot of the content could apply to a larger group or a larger audience. So it could apply to account management, sales, engineers, whomever that's joining an MSP, and how they really get that lingo and get going. So that's how MSP onboarding was born.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we've been on this journey together to build it up, and we just finished the third run, and it's changed even from the first run to now. Can you just share a few of those changes? Why did we make those changes to the course?
Absolutely. We started out, doing this more of a slow roll or more paced, session. We thought, well, we're thinking a lot of folks probably don't have time to really do an all-out assault, if you will, on learning all this stuff at one time. So we spaced it out, a session a week, or a couple sessions a week. And we got some feedback that folks are wanting more. They're wanting this to progress a little quicker. So we're like, well, how can we be ready with this product when folks need it? So we want folks to be able to sign up, at Pax8 Academy when they have new hires starting, and almost just be able to have them hop in a course, very quickly. So how do we balance that time, right? A session a week kind of draws it out too far. So we moved into doing a session a day, which is kind of my alley, right? I really like to push things and what I call lean forward, on everything that we do. And that was a great opportunity to do that. So we get that training done in a sprint, versus a marathon, doing an hour a day, 5 days in a row, keeps folks very engaged.
Definitely. I think so far it seems like there's been a good reaction. It's just every day we're going to meet at the same time for 5 days, and that's going to just jumpstart you. So I know we have some slides. Can we take a look at some of those? And I want to talk with you, Nick, about what we cover in the course. So this is a little bit about what the slides look about. We talk about the course overview here. You introduce yourself. This is a new photo, and we talk through what we have. So let's do a quick overview of what we cover in the course, because I think that'll be important to partners to know what they're going to learn. Do you mind covering a few of the topics that we cover? Just what are they?
No problem. I do have to comment on that photo, Bessie. I'm a coach, but I'm like a Bill Belichick coach, right? I gotta have the hoodie on, maybe cut it up a little bit. That's kind of my style.
I love that. No, I was happy to see that.
Yeah,
So that's why you build it with me, and then you make it your own. Exactly.
That's right. There you go. The course, I really tried to encompass everything that I would want one of my employees to know before they joined my shop, my MSP. Really, how could I felt like they were ready, and I could get a lot of the prerequisites out of the way, and they just kind of show up ready to work. If they're an engineer, ready to, put time on a ticket the first day, and even understand why they need to put time against a ticket on the first day, is what I was always looking for. That was what I was always searching for. Like, this course is sort of like a combination of me doing an onboarding plan, I kid you not, hundreds of times, all kinds of iterations, trying to figure this out, trying to make this work somehow, and leading to this course. So we start out really basic. What is an MSP? No one told me what an MSP was or what MSP stood for when I started as an engineer on a help desk. I had no idea. I knew that I like tech stuff, and this is a tech company, and they were going to let me do things. That's all I knew, right? I had no concept of anything. And it was, in some cases, years before I learned the why or understood, why certain things happen or why we did things a certain way. And the course is really meant to, get to the bottom of that. So we talk about what is an MSP, managed service provider, for all those maybe watching that don't know. And how does it operate? Like, what are their business model? How do they make money? And that's really an undertone of the journey working there is how what the business model is. And an MSP, it's time, right? We're selling time. That time is our product. So engineers don't often understand that why. They just know they start working at this place and their manager chases them to put time on a ticket, and there's no correlation between those two things. So understanding that an MSP is their product is time, so we must treat it very carefully, right? We need to use it the best possible way. We need to make the most of it and understand what our responsibilities are using this time based on our role. So if you're an engineer, you're any service-based business, you want to bill 3x, your salary and, make sure that happens. If you're in account management or operations, there's other metrics to measure success there. But again, making that correlation to what an MSP is and the why. And then we move into the product section.
Just like you're talking with Chris, that's so important to know. What is the why? Why are we here? What are we doing? And I think it also, I like that you said sets the tone, because we built this class so that it's not just for engineers, but it's for everyone at the company that's just getting started, so that they know what it is we're doing here and what it is that we need to do to be successful. So I'll let you keep going, but I love that you said that.
Exactly. Thanks for jumping in there. Yeah, so we move on to understand the products that an MSP uses because they're unique. A ticketing system is not the same thing as a PSA. They're different. And there's a reason behind why an MSP uses a PSA like a ConnectWise or AutoTask or Halo to operate their business. And getting these new hires to understand the PSA is our line of business application or our business operating software, if you will. That's what we live in. So if you're an accountant, you may live in QuickBooks. You work at an MSP, you live in a PSA. That's your product, that's your tool. So I like for folks to understand why this tool. That was one of those things for me, starting at an MSP. Why do we use this and not this just other cool like ticketing software? Why do we use this big clunky program? And again, I didn't understand the why, and it wasn't clear to me how that all related. So understanding your tools like RMM, what that does. You typically don't see something like that if you're working in-house at a lot of organizations. Now it's becoming a little more common, but traditionally you would never see that unless you worked at an MSP. So what is it? What does it do?
Yeah.
How can it be your best friend? Right?
Yeah,
Save you a bunch of time and a lot of trouble.
I feel like that's something you sprinkle throughout the whole course, are these nuggets of how can I help make your job easier and make you look smarter to your team and your manager. So I love that you put those in as little things that you've learned along the way, or that are going to be really helpful nuggets for them to take away.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially with RMM, right? If there's any engineers watching or listening to this later, creating value with that tool is so easy. Like once you understand the intention and what you can do with it, right? You can have that tool save you time, save you money, make you look great, right? Automate everything is always my motto, right? I want to automate as much as we can and be able to do more with less.
Definitely.
Moving on from there, probably one of my favorite parts of the course, Bessie, and I know something we work together a lot on, is the glossary of terms, right? So understanding all the lingo that happens at an MSP and what all these acronyms mean. So especially if you're not a technical person, what all, kind of a translation, of what all these acronyms are. And I think even something as seemingly simple as that really helps connect the dots about what people are talking about, right? And what some of these things mean. And even if you're an engineer, there's probably a lot of stuff in the MSP space, lingo wise, that you may not have heard. So we have that in our course, and Bessie helps me keep that sprinkled in and updating that glossary often, because it seems every time we do the course, I say some new term or have some other kind of story, and we have to keep that updated constantly. So should be pretty up to date there.
Exactly. Well, you're bringing up a part of the course that I love, that I want to make sure that we talk about, which is the workbook. So the glossary of terms is at the end of the workbook. And the workbook goes along with the course, and it's this great value add. Do you want to talk a little bit, Nick, about how we developed the workbook, what's in it, what does it look like?
Yeah, again, born from experience. When I was an engineer, I didn't understand that if my employer was paying for me to go to a conference or paying for me, to study for a certification, that the other side of that was that I was intended to bring back value from that experience to the organization and to our partners, right? And demonstrating that value from that expense. So understanding that, right, we kind of built this workbook concept in, and Rex and I talked a lot about it. Bessie, you and I worked on it a ton, of trying to create this kind of autonomous part where folks don't even know that they're doing it, right? But we're kind of helping them out. So once they take the course, they fill out this workbook, they answer questions, they write their own questions. We kind of have these little bubble call outs. We'll say, ask your boss what you're doing here, or what is your process? And get them thinking this way. So when they go back after this course, they have a demonstrated value they can show. These are all the things that I learned and that I understand now, and this is how I can apply this, to this environment, or ask those difficult questions to their boss. Hey, are we automating stuff with our RMM, or what are we automating? If the answer is nothing, then that's a huge value.
Exactly. They can help their boss become better by taking the class, right? And to learn new things and help their business be more profitable. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing about that, because I think it's such a big value add. And the MSP world is all about how are we adding value, how are we showing value. So we want to incorporate that in all of our academy thinking and offerings that we have. So Nick, there's on the last day of the course, we go over some general advice for someone that's just starting out in MSP. Maybe they have a background in internal IT somewhere. Maybe they're brand new to the whole industry. But what are maybe your top 3 pieces of advice for someone that's just starting out at the MSP?
Wow, how much time do we have? We got.
Okay, well, we'll have to make it
I've got a lot of these.
The quick version. That's why I said top 3, just top 3.
Top 3 is tough.
Okay.
I'd say
well,
ways
maybe
to.
I'll give you 4.
We'll see. I would say the kind of undertone is figuring out how to provide value, to your organization, right? And being useful and not just showing up kind of with your hands out, like tell me what to do, like a robot. You do it and then come back and say, tell me what to do. Thinking, objectively, and how to, create that value and being able to take a little risk, right? So an example that I like to use is, volunteer for everything, right? If you want to get promoted at an MSP or any job, really, as far as I'm concerned, volunteering for that extra work or for that after hours project or to go out of town to do this thing or that thing or to create this documentation, that was everything, right? And it worked well for me once I started like putting some of these ideas together. When I was an engineer, I found that what happened if I raised my hand and said, who wants to work this weekend? I didn't really want to work that weekend like anybody else. But I knew that I wanted to learn more about servers or networking or whatever the case was. So how do I learn? I learn best by doing, right? And I recognize that. And who wants to work this weekend on the server project? Sign me up, right? And what happens there is twofold. So you as the engineer in this case, in this example, you get the benefit of learning something new and you're getting paid to do it. And you're getting to spend time with senior leadership in your company or your senior engineer. You're developing a relationship with them, right? So the next time they have something cool coming up, maybe they clue you in on it. Maybe you get involved because you worked on this and now you understand this new product or process, right? So that's kind of your motivation on that side. But on the other side, people notice when you volunteer for things. They notice when you're that person that's that go-getter, you're getting after it. You're trying to improve and be better. And the owner's going to know it. Your manager is going to, start realizing this, that, hey, this person is, they want to make this impact. They want to be better. So really
And I
twofold.
think,
So as
and you've brought up something important too that I think we get asked all the time at Academy. Well, even before I onboard them and I need to hire them. And I think you've kind of mentioned a few traits that are important for managers that are hiring on new people to look for: that enthusiasm, willingness to learn, because a lot of those technical things are going to change really quickly. It's one thing we know in IT; it's always going to change. And so having some of those traits might be helpful, in this process before they take the course for MSP employee onboarding. That's something that they can look out for, are those traits as well.
Yeah, yeah. I would say another one, and I'd use this kind of analogy coaching a lot, and I talked about it in my presentation at Beyond this year about this concept of leaning forward, right? And what I mean by that is, and this is for everybody, not just an engineer or an account manager or dispatcher, but everyone can do this. Of always be leaning forward towards a resolution or towards the next step in the process. Don't be passive and wait for things to come to you. So what I mean by that is, if we're waiting on a client for a ticket, instead of waiting on them, maybe we have a workflow to automate that or to automatically contact them. That's great. But if we're not busy and we're not doing anything else, let's call them. Like, they'll appreciate the follow up, that human interaction, that relationship. Don't wait, like, kind of go forward, right? Schedule that project on site. Don't wait for the parts to get here. The parts are going to be here on Tuesday. Schedule it today, right? Like, start leaning forward and being proactive. Don't wait for something to happen before you do the next thing. We can often do many things concurrently, right? And keep our progress moving forward. And that goes to with coaching, your own employees, like teaching this as part of your culture. We may be a group that, does that. We want to be always leaning forward toward that next step. We don't want to be complacent in anything that we do. That was kind of a motto I use with my teams is, let's push the envelope a little bit and ask for forgiveness instead of permission, right? When appropriate.
Yes, exactly.
Don't quote me on that one, but that
Yeah.
worked out pretty well for me. Is don't be afraid to lean into something, right? Even if it's not your role necessarily to do a process or to do a project, there's no one stopping you from a lot of this stuff.
And that's
Another
great
great quote
advice.
from,
Oh, or sorry, I was just going to say a great piece of advice you give at the end of class usually is also, you have to be doing the job that you want before you even have it, right? That, forward thinking and trying to prove your value and see, what needs to be done. What can I do to make this process better, to help this client? So that's what I heard you're speaking to as well with leaning forward.
exactly. And not to quote Steve Jobs twice in one video,
1
but
hour.
yeah, in 1 hour at that is, the world is made up by people just like you, right? They've created processes, they've created things. They're not someone special, they're a regular person. And you can shape the world that you're in just like they have, right? You can create your own things, your own products, your own tools, your own process, and there's no one to stop you. And a lot of folks' mind, there's this invisible barrier, that they keep bumping up against, but there's nothing stopping you from saying, hey, we need an SOP for a QBR process, right? How do we do a QBR? Just start writing it out and then take it to your boss and say, hey, I started working on this, I'm thinking about this, do you have any ideas? They're going to love you for that, right? Like, you're leaning forward, you're creating that value, and you're doing the job before you get the job, like you said, Bessie. That's so big, right? In MSP, I would see that all the time with particularly engineers, that I managed a lot of. They would say, hey, when are you going to train me to be a level 2 tech? And I said, train you to be a level 2 tech? Like, what are you talking about? I was like, let me get
Yeah.
this straight. You want me to spend the time and money to train you to be in this role, and then once you get there, like, you want me to pay you more as a result of that too? Like, am I understanding that right? And it just
Doesn't
doesn't
sound
work.
great, right?
Yeah, no one's going to
Exactly.
just pick you up and say, oh, you're a level 1, you should be the service manager now, right? Like,
Yep.
it doesn't happen that way. You have to kind of barge into those spaces respectfully, and start getting it in the mix and show that initiative, lean forward into that process.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know if you're listening and you're like, "Ooh, I need to take this course," maybe you're either hiring someone on new, or maybe you're a manager and you are like, "I want to do a test run. I want to see if this is an onboarding. We can add this to our employee onboarding process." You should definitely take the course, and you can sign up. You can see the links are below in the description to how to sign up. It's just a quick link. You can register in our platform, Pax8 Marketplace, so don't forget about that. The other thing is, you might have been hearing us talk about this for quite a bit of time, but we have some words from our partners who have taken the class and have shared a testimonial. So I just want to take a look at some of those and see the great work that Nick has been doing. So this is from All in IT. The employee onboarding course is a great start for anyone new to MSPs and how they operate properly. Nick was a very informative host. Highly recommend this course to anyone working in the MSP space. And let's take a look. We've got, I think, another one here. The MSP Employee Onboarding course is the perfect way to arm new hires that lack MSP experience with the foundational knowledge they'll need to orient themselves in the MSP world. The course covers nearly all aspects of the MSP industry in a concise, efficient way. This course is a must for all new hires without experience in the industry. And this is our last one. So the MSP onboarding course was a great experience. There's lots of good discussion between the instructor and class. Nick created many opportunities for us to learn from each other as well as from him. Nick was a good fit to lead the course. He created a fun and engaging environment while keeping things on topic. That was common angle. And those are things I'm really proud of too, and you should be proud of as well, because an instructor-led course, we're all about trying to create that engagement, learn from one another, build relationships with other MSPs, and come together. So I was really happy to see that one as well, and I hope you were too.
Humbling again to see that feedback, right? I just like coaching, I just want to provide value, to our partners and folks that sign up. So really happy that people are getting that, right? And something they can take back to their organizations and implement, these ideas and concepts, or like you said, Bessie, use this course as part of their onboarding, outsource a little bit, save that effort and time, and, go through our course and get their folks the training that they need.
And the last thing I want to bring up about the course is that we are building out syllabus, a syllabi, like, think about a syllabus from if you went to a university or college, you got this list, and you and it had sometimes had additional readings, or what are the books that you're not required reading, but additional reading. And you shared 2 books with me. And so I wanted you to just quickly share why you chose these books and why they're good for anyone that's joining an MSP to take a look at. So let's see. We've got, I think, an image of the first one. We've got The Adventure of an IT Leader. So do you mind sharing, why did you choose this book?
This book is great for anyone that wants to understand what being an IT leader, a CIO, a service manager, an IT director, what does the other side of IT look like outside of engineering? And that book does a great job of really outlining what it is. And it's not a technical book. It's not a self-help book.
Yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah, it's more of like a coaching book, right? It's something that you're going through, and you're kind of following someone's journey through this process. Is they're learning about how to manage IT projects, or how to ask the right questions, or how to hold people accountable and set deadlines. And excellent start for someone that's trying to see what the other side looks like without, kind of dipping their toe in the water, without actually taking the plunge on, taking that promotion. They want to see what it's like. That's a great way to do that. And it's a really fun read. You don't want to put it down.
And there's one other that you showed we had on screen for just a second, which was The Lean Startup. So do you mind just sharing, why should they read this book?
Yes, this is required reading for anybody, according to me, that's building a company or building an organization, on how to build something people want and will use, right? So the quote from the very beginning of the show, we got to start with what, is going to be useful for someone, and what they're actually going to use and what they want, not what the coolest tech thing is. So the lean startup process talks about validating ideas early, and shipping product and shipping ideas, before maybe they're ready, to get that feedback and finding out what people want. Can be a little counterintuitive to the process I described. I realize that. But I think it plays in, especially with like products, and pricing. And if you're an MSP and you try to figure out how to sell, or, what's going to do well in the marketplace, not just guessing and spending 100 hours building the service plan and then spend all this money on marketing materials and put it out there and nobody wants it, right? We have
We've
to
heard the story
validate these
before.
ideas once or twice, right? We got to validate these ideas, what the market wants, and what value, that their partners could be looking for. So I really love that book on, failing fast, A/B testing, all those kind of concepts. Great
Yeah.
read for anybody, in the organization. You don't have to be technical.
Thank you for sharing both those. I know we are always talking on Academy Live about how leaders are readers, and it's always great to share some reading. So my last question for you, Nick, you've been an amazing, amazing guest. Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
I'm just going to say thanks for having me on. This has been a blast. I'd love to come on again sometime. And
Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Love to have you. Thank you so much again for coming. It was great to have you. And let's bring you back, Chris. Chris, how are you doing? Have any final thoughts about this episode, this show today that you want to share?
Just great insight from Nick. He's just a great guy, and it's such a pleasure to work with. But to hear his perspective from his experience and what he's contributed to Academy, I think is great. And I loved his, really just encouraging people to check out Academy, and not just from a perspective, hey, shameless plug, but just a very sincere kind of felt like there's a lot here to offer. And I think Nick, his contributions to developing that for partners has been an amazing thing to see, and just tapping into his experience and knowledge is awesome. So very fortunate to have him here, and glad he was on the show.
Agreed. And I'm so glad you had a chance to talk about MSP Employee Onboarding. It's an amazing course. It's one you should check out. The link is below. And we are just so glad with how it's turning out. It's going to be a great resource. It's offered every single month. So it's something you should definitely check out. And so we're so glad to have Nick on the show. And with that, I'm just going to say a quick shout out to Rex. You're in the forest, so you're not tuning in to us right now, but I hope you're having a great time. He'll be on the show next week. Next week I'll be off, so we're doing a little switcheroo. But next week we'll be talking to Tara. She'll be talking to Tara Rummer. I'll double check her last name. There she is, from Immense Networks, and works with IMIBot. And she'll be talking all about with Chris about community. It's an episode you do not want to miss. Remember, we are live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain on Pax8 Cloud on YouTube. You can like this video to support us and subscribe. And with that, instead of throwing to Rex, I'm going to throw to Chris to close us out.
I will do my best to keep up with the Rick experience, and ask everybody, or mention, as Rex says, ask yourself, what are you going to do differently tomorrow to improve your business?
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.